Mountain State Mysteries contains adult content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Mark.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is Mountain State Mysteries. The case we have for you today is about a 78-year-old cattle rancher from Sissonville, West Virginia. This is the story of Cleo Burdette. Cleo never married, and he didn't have any children. He lived in the family homestead in Sissonville on Cicerone Road. According to Cleo's niece, her uncle was a master of his trade, a well-known farmer. Quote, "That was his life," end quote. Cleo's love of farming, horses, and raising cattle. Quote, "He did a wonderful job at it, and he usually got top dollar for his cattle at market," end quote.
On August 12, 2004, Cleo went to a cattle auction to sell some of his cattle. What happened on the day of August 13th is unclear due to the lack of articles on Cleo. On August 13th, 2004, 78-year-old Cleo Burdette was found murdered in his home by his sister, Gwen Wines. Cleo's home had been ransacked, windows broken, and the telephone line cut. Due to this being an ongoing investigation, we sadly do not have many details about this case.
In an article from August 14th, 2004, it says the Kanawha County Sheriff's Department is investigating the discovery of a dead body early Friday morning. Sheriff deputies discovered the body of a man in his 70s around 9:30 a.m. after a family member who discovered the body called 911, said Lieutenant J.S. Bales, spokesman for the Kanawha County Sheriff's Department. Quote, "We are treating it as suspicious circumstances," Bales said. Bales would not comment on how the man died pending an autopsy. Deputies reported the man's home smelled strongly of natural gas. A Kanawha County dispatcher said deputies remained at the scene throughout the day, investigating the incident. The man's name and address were not available Friday, end quote. To me, it sounds like the murderer or murderers tried to use gas in hope that it may catch fire and start a house fire to hide potential evidence.
Cleo's sister said in an interview with WCHS TV, quote, "Everybody was shocked to death. When this happened, that was the biggest shock that had ever happened to the community," end quote. Her family said she eventually moved out of state, partially due to the pain and fear she felt over her brother's death. What we do know about this case is that Gwen went to check on her brother on the morning of August 13th after not being able to reach him after he left her home for dinner the previous evening. Her family said that Cleo would always call her to let her know he was home.
Loretta Sharkey, Cleo's niece, said, quote, "It traumatized her," end quote. Gwen and Loretta used to talk about it, and she said, quote, "It was a constant on her mind. She couldn't understand why they couldn't find out who did it, why they couldn't make an arrest, why they couldn't do something that was conclusive," end quote. Loretta said that she painfully remembers the day that changed her family forever. Her uncle had been tied up, beaten, and forced to drink weed killer.
Kanawha County Sheriff's Office Detective Lieutenant Dean Snuffer said it was an apparent from the condition of the home that whomever was there was in search of something. Quote, "It appeared to us that somebody has really ransacked the house, went through everything, It looked to us like they were looking for something. Investigators would soon find out that Cleo had received a large sum of money the previous day from the cattle sale. Quote, he had gone to market the day before and sold a bunch of cattle. Somebody must have been at the market, seen him with all the cash, knew he lived alone, knew his house was isolated. He would be an easy target, end quote.
Quote, some individuals in the area that live here and went to church in the area, they came forward and said they spotted what appeared to be, they thought, a reddish-colored Toyota that had been parked near Mr. Burdette's house, end quote. In another article from August 18th, 2004, it said Bales had labeled the incident as suspicious and said that detectives are treating it as a homicide, at least until the medical examiner gives them a case of death. There were some abrasions on Burdette's body, but no sign of a gunshot wound or other contusions. Burdette's home was, quote, in a state of disarray, end quote, Bell said, though investigators could find no sign of forced entry. During my research in a few different articles, I saw quotes of people saying that the house didn't have forced entry. This had me wondering if Cleo knew who the murderer or murderers were. If so, they knew that cash would be in the house, however, it wasn't there.
Loretta said, quote, I don't think that they thought he had a chance to go to the bank, but I guess he immediately went to the bank the next morning. In November of 2004, Gwen told Eyewitness News that, quote, I hope I get to look them in the eye and ask why they did it, end quote. Sadly, she never got the chance. In 2019, she passed away not knowing what happened to her brother.
Snuffer said, quote, Mr. Burdette's case, we still get information on it frequently, and we follow it up until that lead is exhausted. Somebody out there has to know something. There was somebody at Mr. Burdette's house. We want them to know that he has a family. They did care for him, and they want to know what happened. We want anybody with information, no matter how small they think it is, or how irrelevant they might think it is, to call us. Because that could be the last piece, in this case, that we need to solve, end quote.
For Loretta and her family, it's just a matter of dignity and justice. Loretta said, quote, if you can beat, torture someone, kill them in the manner, you should be human enough just to come forward. And if you're not the person or persons who did it, then if you know something, you should do it. The family, they deserve it after all these years, end quote.
After 19 years of unanswered questions, investigators remain hopeful that this case could be solved. Snuffer said they have had suspects in the case. Some have been cleared, he said, but there are others they are still looking at. They are asking for anyone who may have any information to call 304-357-0169. You can also email them at tips@canalsheriffs.us or submit a tip on their website. Courtney, do you have any thoughts on this case?
I just feel it's like any of our other cases. You have a family out here that deserves justice, to know what happened to their loved one, and for someone to be prosecuted for the crimes that they have enforced, that they have done. There's a lot of things with this case, like any of our other cases, that just do not make any type of sense whatsoever. And I wish that there was more info about this case out there, but of course, being a ongoing investigation, there's a lot of stuff that they just can't provide to us and everything. I mean, do I feel it could be somebody he knew? I kind of do, I really honestly kind of do. I mean, I just hope in the long run that they finally get answers and one day this family will get justice. Mark, do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to know if they tracked down the red Toyota that everyone said they saw that day. If the people knew that he had the money, they would have either knew him personally, knew he was at a cattle sale, or they could have been at the cattle sale and really followed him home in a way and just watched him, but somehow missed him going to the bank on the way home. I feel awful for his sister having to walk in and see that, and just how it still impacts the family to this day. The interview I saw with his niece, like, you could tell it still bothers her and affects her. This isn't just something that stops affecting the family after all these years. Yeah, the pain just amplifies over time, and I hate that the family still to this day does not have answers. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will tell you the story of a 16-year-old girl who had her entire life ahead of her. If you find yourself enjoying Mountain State Mysteries, leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple and Spotify podcasts. It helps others find good West Virginia true crime.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all at Mountain State Mysteries.
If you have a case you want us to cover, email us at mountainstatemysteries304@gmail.com.
For the show notes, check out our website, mountainstatemysteriespodcast.com.